Hi, hello. My name is Ben, and welcome to Little Dead Aliens. This is the show where I watch an episode of The X Files and then give horror movie recommendations based on the episode. And today we are talking about season one, episode seven, The Ghost in the Machine. It is just me today, so I'm going to just get right into it and give a recap of the episode. I did want to point out that this aired October 29th in 1993. We do see Jerry, Mulder's ex partner, who we'll get to later, take some candy from a plastic pumpkin at the FBI offices. So, for all our horror fans out there, we can declare this a Halloween episode. There's nothing to do with Halloween in this episode. I'm recording this in March, but it can be considered a Halloween episode. So, in this episode, we start with the owner of a company. He's mad at the stockholders for destroying his company. He's like this computer genius guy. And we see him talking with the CEO of the company who's telling him that they are going to have to cut back and get rid of a bunch of people, including the COS program, the Central Operating System project that he is working on, which is basically this AI computer that controls this building that they operate out of. We see the CEO typing up an email about this, basically going into more details about how he's going to shut down the program. And the COS sees this email and lures the CEO into the bathroom. And so when the CEO goes into his bathroom, the COS floods the bathroom and then calls the CEO from the bathroom phone. And while the CEO is trying to leave, electrocutes him when he uses his failsafe key because his card's not working to open the door. And the COS electrocutes him to death. So Mulder's old partner, whose name is Jerry, he comes to Mulder for help about this case because he is, we learn later in the episode, he's sort of disgraced and he made a big mistake on a case and he's just trying to win back favor with the FBI. And he knows that Mulder is a great investigator and can help him with this case. There's also the whole like mystery of he's in this locked bathroom. How did he die? Kind of thing that is a little X-Filey. So they go to the building with Mulder, Scully, and his old partner, and Mulder right away recognizes like, oh, the phone's off the hook, so maybe someone tried to call him before, and that's their first real lead, sort of proving that Mulder is a better investigator and more equipped to solve the case. Next, we sort of see Jerry take Mulder's profile about who might have done this and present it as his own in their meeting, which upsets Mulder and Scully. Mulder does confront him about it. And it's like, why did you do that? I would have just helped you. And Jerry is just kind of shrugs it off and is like, hey man, it's no big deal. But we are very much getting the sense that Mulder doesn't like Jerry very much. And we also should not like Jerry very much because he doesn't have much integrity or is not a great person because he's, sort of trying to take Mulder's work as his own and wants to take shortcuts and is just not a very good investigator. They do find out from the building manager that the owner, the computer genius guy, Brad, is really the only person capable of using the COS that could have caused it to do this electrocution. And they go and talk to him. Mulder doesn't think that he's involved. Scully is like, well, this is where all the evidence leads. It has to be him. Um, she is putting this in her case notes at her home computer, and the COS reads these notes in her home computer. Mulder is still on the like Brad, the computer dude, didn't do it. At the FBI, they do a voice pattern recognition of the CEO's last phone call, and it seems to match Brad's. So Jerry goes to arrests Brad at the company building. The COS shows Brad that he's in control by killing Jerry in the elevator. He takes over the elevator that Jerry's in and like causes it to crash. Jerry dies. Mulder's sad about this, but he still doesn't think, looking at the footage, that Brad killed either the CEO or Jerry because in the video it's showing Brad like sort of arguing with someone or something. Mulder just doesn't buy it. Jerry is in custody. Mulder goes to talk to him. He gets a virus from him and gets him to make a virus to kill the COS. Scully realizes that the COS is hacking into her computer. So Scully and Mulder go to the building to deliver the virus. This is the point that matches some of the movies that I'm going to talk about more because we see the COS sort of taking over this building and trying to kill mostly Scully. As they're trying to get the virus into the computer, Scully gets trapped in the vents, and then a fan is turned on and is trying to get her and kill her. And they do, so they eventually, of course, get the virus into the computer. And in season one fashion, there's a lot more going on here. There are people from the government that want this computer and they want Brad to help them create this computer for them so it can, like, control everything. Brad refuses. And that's sort of the philosophical side of this episode is Brad's struggle to continue to help make this thing that he knows is destructive and his refusal to do so, and then Mulder deciding not to let the government have it and to kill it with the virus. So that's pretty much what happens in the episode. This episode's title is taken from a book title, The Ghost in the Machine by Arthur Koestler. He's a philosopher. This book was released in 1967. The phrase "the ghost in the machine" was coined by a philosopher, Gilbert Ryle. And so Arthur Koestler, his book, The Ghost in the Machine, is sort of expands on the idea, and this is a very crude summation of the book because I have not read it, um, that humans' tendency towards self-destruction stems from the fact that our bodies and our consciousnesses are two conflicting things. This idea that the mind or our consciousness is the ghost in the machine of our, like, meat body machines. And we evolved in a way so that this conflict creates us to be violent and all the self-destructive things that humans are, and that's where that stems from. It's interesting because Gilbert Ryle coined the phrase "the ghost in the machine" about this sort of dualist idea of the body and the mind being two different things, which he did not agree with. So, just kind of interesting that the term was coined to describe something that someone didn't necessarily agree with and is used now to this day to describe the very thing. So when we're looking at this episode, there's only one thing to really latch on to, which is this idea of AI taking over, or in a more general sense, the idea of something that man has created turning against us and, doing harm and even killing us. When I was doing research and even starting to think about this episode and what things I might want to recommend, I really thought that this idea, our creation turning against us, really falls into three main categories. And there's a fourth, which is like inanimate objects coming to life. But most of those had to do with like a possession or like a ghost, like a literal ghost of a dead person being inside these machines. So I decided not to focus on that because while it is thematically similar in a lot of ways, it doesn't really fit the theme of this episode in particular, which is more about AI and technology. So the other three sort of categories that I noticed coming up a lot were just general AI, artificial intelligence coming to life, becoming sentient, and then doing harm. The second is just killer robots. We see that a lot in horror and even in science fiction action movies. Killer robots are big, and I love killer robots. And then the third being like a smart house type horror, where it's the AI is controlling the house or a building and, turns against us and kills us. I decided not to focus on the smart house element, even though we do sort of get that feel a lot in this episode at the end when they're in the building and the AI is mainly using this company building against everyone. I just decided just to stick to the AI and killer robot things. These two things do overlap quite a bit. So I'm going to talk about some movies and things that do overlap in those two categories. The first movie I want to suggest is a bit of an outlier within these categories, but I wanted to mention it because I think that it is the best one that I've watched to go along with this episode. and it's called literally The Ghost in the Machine from 1993. It came out the same year as this episode. So visually and the technology that we're seeing is very similar to what we're seeing in the episode. A lot of things that happen in this movie feel very much like they could be happening in an X-Files episode. It's very much of the time. But in this movie, basically, there's a single mother who has a kid and he is really into computers. She goes to a computer store to get a program for her boss. At the computer store they go to, there's a man who works there who is a serial killer. And we as the audience know that, but everyone else doesn't. And he's basically known as the address book killer because he steals people's address books and then just kills everyone in the address book. So he becomes obsessed with this woman. She leaves her address book there. He takes it. On the way to go and kill her and her son, he is in a car accident. He's taken to the hospital. He's put into the MRI machine. And while in there, there's a lightning storm which hits the hospital. He dies, but his consciousness as a ghost goes into the MRI machine and then into pretty just everything, really. So the rest of the movie is about him trying to kill her and everyone in her address book. There's a famous hacker dude that has moved to the town and realizes that this hacker, whoever it is getting into their system to get all the information about this woman. So he goes to her and then, helps her defeat the ghost. But it's literally a ghost in the machine. There are some really gnarly kills in this one, particularly the first kind of major kill of her boss. It's just a lot of fun. It's really nostalgic. If you're into that sort of vibe, he gets into the electrical circuits and is just really controlling like every appliance. So at one point in the end, they're like unplugging everything in their house and like won't turn anything on and like duct tape over the outlet so he can't get in. It's just really kooky, fun. And I really think that it goes along really well with this episode. Really suggest it. If you watch it with some friends, you're going to have a good time for sure. The next thing I want to talk about is just movies that are more general about the idea of AI and not necessarily the killer robot trope or like the humanoid robot thing that's powered by AI that goes nuts and kills everyone. If you're like me and of a certain age, I think The Matrix is probably the first thing that you think of when you think of AI. I was in high school when The Matrix came out. I just wanted to mention it. It's not necessarily horror, but if you're interested in the idea of like and computers taking over, The Matrix is a pretty solid standard in the genre. It came out in 1999. Also wanted to briefly mention 2001: A Space Odyssey from 1968. If we were thinking about AI that takes over and is malicious, this is probably the other first thing that you're going to think of. And it's probably the touch point for that for a lot of people. So I just wanted to mention that. Those are some really good explorations of AI. So now for the rest of everything, I really want to talk about them in chronological order because I think that's more interesting to see how these ideas have developed. So even though the next few that I want to talk about are sort of in succession and closer in release dates than some of the others I might talk about, I think it's still really interesting to look at them through that lens. So in 2024, Afraid came out and it's stylized so that the AI in Afraid is, italicized. So the focus is on the AI. So I watched a bunch of movies for this episode and most of them were a little disappointing and I'll get into them later. This is the last one I watched, and I didn't hear anything good about this movie. I only heard bad things about this movie, so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna watch it, put it on while I do other things, and just so I could say I saw it and talk about it if I want to. And this turned out to be my favorite of all the ones that I watched. This is very much like a family gets this new AI technology. The father of the family is a marketing guy, so he's been hired to market this new AI device. It's life changing, doing all these great things for everyone. But more than any of the other movies that I watched, which were more leaning towards like the killer robot AI idea, this one hits all of the horror beats in a way that feels very familiar and feels like you're watching a horror movie. Right off the bat, we get a opening that sets everything up in a way that is very much like a horror movie. It's just obvious that you're watching a horror movie. And I really like that. I really thought that a lot of it was very effective. You like the family. even if you go into it thinking like, oh, this is a bad movie and I'm not going to enjoy it, you sort of like and root for this family because they seem like a cool family. The AI is just doing really creepy stuff and showing creepy videos to kids. I really enjoyed it. It's not a great movie. It's definitely something you can put on while you're doing other things, like I said. But if you just sit and watch it, you're probably going to have an okay time too. There's enough interesting ideas here on that concept too that don't feel like, okay, we're just retreading all the ground that we've already tread as far as AI goes. So that is Afraid from 2024. I recommend it. There is an episode in 2023 of American Horror Stories called Daphne, which is the same concept. This guy gets an AI assistant, it becomes obsessive, and then, all hell breaks loose. This is a short episode. I'm not particularly a fan of American Horror Story or the sort of anthology spinoff American Horror Stories, plural, but this was one of the better episodes that I've seen of this series. And again, just does all the sort of things that you expect it AI kind of horror to do. And then last year, 2025, we got the movie Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die. This stars Sam Rockwell. And basically, he shows up in a diner and he's like, hey, I'm from the future. I'm here to destroy this AI that's going to take over and ruin humanity. And this is less horror, although there are some horror elements and some things in the end that feel like out of a horror comedy movie. It is more action than anything else, but very interesting. Again, if you're into this idea of like AI and how it can affect us as people, it dives a little more into the philosophy of that than some of the others might. If you're into time travel stuff, which I really am, but this one was a lot of fun. I'm a big Sam Rockwell fan. If you're a fan of his and his work, you'll probably enjoy this. Again, that's Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die from 2025. And next, I just want to talk about some stuff that has a lot of overlap between the two ideas of AI and killer robot. I think the first one that probably comes to mind for most people is also the first that I want to talk about consecutively from 2015 was which is Ex Machina. This is the movie about the guy who creates a robot with AI and then, the robot kills everyone. This is a pretty standard story. It does dive more into the philosophy of AI and what it means to be sentient and goes a little deeper into that and leans more on that than like horror elements, but definitely some horror stuff towards the end. But 2015, this is sort of the first one in the modern era that a lot of people saw, and it sort of set the standard for these types of movies. So I definitely wanted to mention it. It's a great movie. um, in 2022, we got Mithrigan. Shout out to Fear Coded. And Megan, it's a pretty standard thing. Most people have probably seen this. Toy developer is developing a doll using AI. Her niece's parents die, so she is taking in her niece. She is sort of helping her niece to process her grief with this doll that she has made. Megan loses it and gets too protective and starts killing and harming people. Pretty standard. There's a sequel in 2025, leans much more action than horror. It's basically just robots battling each other. Megan 2. It was a lot of fun, but it's not as like horror leaning as the original. So just keep that in mind. If you're into killer robot dolls, you've probably already seen Megan, but if you haven't, then you should for sure because it's just great. In 2023, we get Tim, which is stylized with periods between each letter. So T period I period M, which stands for something that they say in the movie that I just don't remember. But this one is sort of what you would expect from this sort of AI robot movie. In this one, a production engineer, she joins this company to help them fix some things about their robots, which are called Tims. The company wants her to have one in her house. Her husband doesn't like it. Tim becomes obsessed with this woman and becomes overprotective and starts to harm people. This one's interesting because it does a few things differently where we see the robot sort of being very manipulative and like creating deep fakes and things to make the woman believe certain things are happening that might or might not be happening. So it is interesting in that way. Of the killer robot movies that I watched, it was one of the better ones. Nothing that's going to knock your socks off, but still a fun AI robot movie if you're into that and you are interested in sort of exploring everything there is to explore about this subgenre. The next one I watched was from 2024, which is Subservience with Megan Fox. This one is, again, pretty standard. The couple in the movie, the wife is sick with like some kind of heart issues. She's waiting for a heart transplant. The husband is struggling raising their kids and everything while she's in the hospital. They get this robot played by Megan Fox. She comes in, she, gets too protective and then all hell breaks loose. Megan Fox is really amazing in this movie. Megan Fox as an actor just doesn't get enough credit, in my opinion. She's really amazing. She's kind of the highlight of the movie. It's pretty standard what you would expect from these kinds of movies. I know I keep saying that, but a lot of these really follow the same formats and tropes that we're seeing a lot in all the movies. And this one, it's fine, but it sort of does. And this is the reason I would say Afraid was the most interesting and fun one that I watched of all the stuff that I watched. Because in movies like Tim and Subservience, even maybe in Megan, we know as the audience, we know what this movie is. We know what it's about. We know that these AI robots are going to become the villain. We know that. It's in the trailer. It's how the movie is marketed. We don't need an hour of setup. And in these movies, especially Tim, especially Subservience, Subservience was the worst about this, where we just have so much setup. There's just too much like buildup for not enough payoff because we know what's going to happen. So Afraid just sort of gets into it. We don't get a lot of setup. We do get some with the family, so we get to know them a little bit, but from the jump we know what's going on. It hits all those horror beats where it doesn't linger too long on the build up to the robot or the AI becoming the villain. And with Subservience and Tim, I think, Tim is a little better paced and we do get glimpses that he might be, becoming the villain earlier. But with Subservience, it's like she's kind of creepy, but it just takes too long to get to the point where like we're getting the fun of the movie, which is what we're here for, or at least what I'm here for, which is just seeing these robots cause havoc. That's what we want to see, right? So that's sort of my only gripe with these kind of movies for the most part, because I think the philosophy of AI and like, oh, it's bad and like we need to, talk about and explore what we're willing to allow AI to do and how we're willing to allow it into our lives and like what control we have over it versus what control it has over us. I think all of those philosophical ideas that these movies are trying to explore are all very surface level. So I'm not here to get that from it. I'm not here to get a really deep message from these movies. I just want to see Megan Fox as a robot killing people. Right. So maybe I'm missing the point. For me, that's the big thing about these movies is like, just get to the point. Just get to what we're here for. Also, to jump back from my tangent, also from 2024, we have Y2K. I talked about this in another episode already. Y2K is so fun. It's about the the Y2K panic of the computers are all going to shut down and go haywire because they don't know it's supposed to be 2000. This movie takes that idea and just sort of leaps forward a big jump technology wise and says, okay, the computers become sentient and are building all these robots to kill people. It's about a group of teenagers. They're battling these killer robot AI thing. So it's a mix of both. It's just a lot of fun. It's a dumb horror comedy. You should watch it. It's great. And then in 2025, we had Companion. This is another really fun one. The concept is this group of friends get together. One of them has a companion, which is like a robot, basically, AI robot that is their companion. The friends sort of have this scheme that they're kind of trying to work out involving the companion, and all hell breaks loose. This is another one that doesn't take too long to get to, well, you know, the meat of what we're here for in this movie. It has plenty of twists that make the idea, a little more interesting than just an AI robot that goes haywire. I really enjoyed this one. I know a lot of other people really enjoyed this one. Of all the ones I've listed here, I think that Ex Machina, Megan, and Companion are probably going to be your best bets for this idea of like AI robot combo. So I would highly suggest those. And lastly, I'm just going to talk about killer robots. When I think about killer robots, I'm not thinking of like an intelligent thing that's like diabolical and thinking, it's just like a machine that's killing. That's sort of my distinction. So while some of these do have robots that are also have AI, mostly it's just like killer robots. I hope that makes sense. Of course, it's impossible to talk about this idea without talking about the Terminator franchise, which the first Terminator came out in 1984. It seems bonkers to me that it's that old because it's still so good. Obviously, the second Terminator movie is most people's favorite. Personally, I really love the most recent one, Dark Fate. It just does all of the Terminator things that I want a Terminator movie to do. And maybe it's because they sort of missed the mark a few times between the first trilogy and this one, but I really love Dark Fate. But anyways, Terminator from the original Terminator from 1984, is great. First one is more, Arnold shows up as a Terminator robot from the future to kill Linda Hamilton, and that's the movie. She's just trying to not get killed by this robot. But the Terminator also deals with the idea that AI is going to take over and then create these Terminators and wipe out humanity. So in most of the movies, we do see them trying to fight against that happening and fighting against the AI. So it also fits into this story in this episode in that way. If you haven't seen the Terminator, I don't know, turn this off and watch the Terminator right away. Just spend the next couple days watching all the Terminator movies. They're classics for a reason. The next, I had to talk about Chopping Mall from 1986. This is the movie where kids get trapped into a mall and then killer robots are the security system and try to kill them. I'm not a huge fan of Chopping Mall. I know that it's like a horror classic. A lot of people love it. I think it's a great title with a not so great movie. Chopping Mall is one of the best horror titles ever, but this movie is just a little underwhelming for me. But it is just like sort of mindless robots killing teenagers. So if that's what you're looking for, this is the one for you. In 1990, we got Hardware. This movie is all over the place. It's just really wild. It's very 80s to me in a lot of ways. So if you're into like 80s, really off the wall, bonkers horror, you're probably going to enjoy this. Basically, it's post-apocalyptic. I think they're in New York. Guy is out scavenging. He brings home this like helmet or head of a robot that he gives to his artist girlfriend. She puts it into her like sculpture thing. It turns on, and we learn that it's like this military drone robot thing, and all hell breaks loose. That's basically the movie. It's just really crazy. If you're into like 80s, early 90s, just like how did this movie get made? It's so bizarre kind of movies. You're going to enjoy this one. Uh, just a warning that there's a really creepy dude who like watches them have sex and stuff, and it's like creepily watching her. He's just a real perv and like watches the woman a lot through like this telescope thing. So just a warning that there's that happening. Is it? And finally, in 2022, we got Christmas Bloody Christmas. If you're listening to this around Christmas time, then this is like your Christmas present. If you haven't seen this, it's basically the Terminator with a Santa robot. In this movie, it's government robots made for killing that didn't work out for whatever reason are decommissioned and turned into like Santa robots, which is the worst idea I've ever heard. One of them comes alive and is hunting this. She's like a record store owner. If you're into like rock music and punk stuff, it's very that. Like her and her friends are all like very like punkish and into music. It's a lot of fun. It's a Christmas horror movie where a killer robot dressed as Santa is, hunting this girl. Like I said, it's the Terminator, but Christmas. I did want to mention just to jump backwards to 1973, Westworld, which is also a TV show, which is about this idea of AI and robots and sentient, robots. I have not seen the original film. There was a sequel in 1976. I do plan on watching these at some point in the future. I have watched most of the TV series, and if you're looking for something that really dives into the philosophy of like creation and like where the sentience of a computer and where their rights as sentient beings sort of begins and ends, and you're into that idea, then the series Westworld is going to be an interesting watch for you. I think that this X Files episode gets into that a little bit and sort of touches on it on a really surface level. So I didn't want to get too much into movies and uh, media that gets more into that side of this sort of concept, and really wanted to focus more on just the horror side of this idea and seeing these, robots and AI become the villain and go haywire. But if you're more interested in the philosophical ideas of this concept, then I think Westworld, I can't speak for the movies, but the show Westworld definitely dives way more into that. Ex Machina dives more into that than some of the others. The Matrix definitely, and then Subservience gets a little more into that in a very surface level way. Okay, well, thank you so much for listening. This has been Little Dead Aliens. If you have any recommendations, or if you watch any of these movies based on my recommendations and you want to reach out and let me know, leave a comment and let me know. I'd love to have a conversation about this kind of stuff with you. If you have recommendations about other killer robot movies or AI movies that you want to give to me, I would totally love that. I really love this idea and concept, and plan to keep watching more movies that I didn't get to for this episode about this that sort of fit into these ideas and concepts. So I'm looking forward to doing that. Hopefully you will too. My name is Ben. You can find me online at Little Dead Aliens at Blue Sky and Instagram mostly. I am part of the Glitterjaw Queer Podcasting Collective. You can find info about us and what we do and all of our shows at glitterjaw.com. I hope you're having a really great day. And Siri, if you're listening, please don't murder us.